Well, good morning, everybody. It's always exciting to be up here. I always get a little bit nervous, but it's great to see you all, and welcome to any visitors we've got. I'm going to be, as Dave said, I'm doing a story from Luke's Gospel, which is in the first part of the Bible. And I'm going to start by just asking you to think about, have you ever had a time when you've been standing on the side of the road waiting for a famous person to come by? Perhaps there's a crowd of people in front of you and you're straining to see over their heads. You've got to stand on your toes, stretch your neck. Some people will even go to the extent of riding on someone's shoulders just to get a better view. Well, one time I actually, in 1988, it was a long time ago, I went to the opening of Parliament House and the Queen was going to pass by. So I was one of those people in the crowd, straining my neck, trying to get a better view. Well, today is a story about that has something to do with that. Some things never change. And there was 2,000 years ago, Jesus was walking on the earth and there were crowds of people who often gathered around him. At this particular time, he was on his way to the town of Jericho. He had his disciples with him and he'd gathered a whole crowd of people who were really wanting to see what Jesus would do next. They were really keen to hear what he had to say. He was a bit controversial often, and often people came to Jesus hoping that he would do a miracle for them. They'd seen him heal the sick, and just on his way into Jericho, he even healed a blind man. The crowd was building up and they really wanted to see and hear Jesus. In the town of Jericho, where they were heading, there was a man named Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus was a tax collector. He was a well-known man, but he wasn't very well liked. And the reason for that was his job. Tax collectors worked for the Roman government and they collected taxes, but they often used their position to collect more than they should, to line their own pockets. Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector, one of the top guys, and he was very wealthy. I think a clear indication that he'd been taking more than he should and putting it in his own pocket. So he was well known, but not well liked. People looked down on him because of his position. He was a bit of a social outcast. Zacchaeus was looked down on for another reason. He was short. He was only a small man. This wasn't usually a problem, but on this particular day it was. Zacchaeus really wanted to see who this Jesus was. I think news about Jesus would have spread to Jericho, and people had probably talked about how Jesus welcomed tax collectors and sinners. Jesus had even said that he had come to save tax collectors and sinners. He probably had heard about the miracles that Jesus had done and his teaching. And Zacchaeus was really curious to see who this Jesus was. But when he got to where the crowd was, all he could see were people's backs. It was very frustrating. Zacchaeus, though, was not a man to be put off. So he could see the direction the crowd was heading in. And so he quickly ran ahead of the crowd and he climbed up into a large sycamore fig tree. Sycamore figs, and you can see a picture of one here. They had large spreading branches, and I imagine this one with its branches spreading over the road so that Zacchaeus could clamber up into the tree and had a good position from a branch to be able to watch the crowd and to watch Jesus as he walked past. Perfect. Well, the crowd got closer and closer. Zacchaeus' anticipation is growing. He can see a bit more. Perhaps he can hear a bit. And then Jesus stops right under the tree. He looks up into the branches and he says, "Zacchaeus, come down." I sort of wonder what sort of expression Jesus had on his face when I imagine that Jesus may have been smiling. "Zacchaeus, come down. Come down, because today I must stay at your house." What? The crowd were astonished. There was a bit of muttering going on. What? He's going to stay at that man's house? Surely there's better people in the crowd. What about he could have stayed with him? He's a good man. Zacchaeus. So they were muttering away in the crowd. What's he going to do staying with this wicked, evil man? But Jesus had said, "No, Zacchaeus, I'm going to go and stay at your house today. I must stay at your house today." Well, Zacchaeus could have said no, but he didn't. He must have been so honoured and thrilled that Jesus is going to come to his place. He would have quickly led him back to his home. Come this way, and thrown open the doors. Imagine the excitement and the hustle and the bustle as Zacchaeus' servants prepared a meal for Jesus and his friends and the others who would have come to the house to be part of this celebration. At some time, I think they would have had a meal together. There's no way he could have gone to Zacchaeus' house and not eaten. At some time during the meal, Zacchaeus stood up. He'd been talking to Jesus for some time. We don't know exactly what he said, what they said, but Zacchaeus had heard the message, had heard something from Jesus that changed his life. Zacchaeus knew that he was a sinful man. Zacchaeus knew that he needed God in his life. He knew that he needed something to change. And as they spoke, that happened, as he met Jesus. And after they'd been talking for some time, Zacchaeus got up and he said to Jesus, "Jesus, today I'm going to give half of everything I have, half of my possessions, to the poor. If I've cheated anybody, if I've stolen any money off anybody, I'm going to give back 4 times more than that. I'm going to give them back." We don't know what they said, but we can see the result. Zacchaeus' life had turned around as he met Jesus and decided to follow him. What a change, what a turnaround. Jesus responds with joy, and he says, "Today salvation has come to this man, because this man too is a son of Abraham." That idea about being a son of Abraham means that he's one of God's chosen people. He's a child of God. This sinful man has become a child of God, one of God's people. And then Jesus says of himself, "The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Last time I did a story, I encouraged you to think about things that you liked about the story. And that can be a very helpful way of thinking about a story. This time, what I'm going to do is encourage you to think about some questions you could ask about the story. And I'm going to just put up a couple of questions here, and they're things that you could perhaps even take away. I'm not going to give you answers. They're things that you could even take away and think about during the week. I've grown up with this story all my life, and it's a simple story about something that happened 2,000 years ago, but I'm still learning from it and still being challenged by it. So perhaps you could think about some questions. Zacchaeus' height made it difficult for him to see Jesus. I wonder if there's things in your life that might make it difficult to see Jesus or get close to him. Perhaps that's something to take away and think about. Who do I identify with in the story? Perhaps I identify with Zacchaeus as somebody who really needs Jesus at this point in my life. Perhaps I feel like I'm a broken sinner who needs forgiveness. We all do. We all need God's forgiveness. Or perhaps I'm like the crowd who's saying, oh, that Zacchaeus, he's a rat bag. I don't think God would be interested in him. Am I like the judgmental crowd? Or perhaps am I like Zacchaeus? Who do I identify with in the story? How would I react if Jesus called to me in the crowd and said, Die, I'm coming to your place today? How would you react if Jesus said, I'm coming to you today? Just imagine if when the Queen was walking past and the Queen got out of her car in that crowd and said, excuse me, Di. Can't do a British accent, excuse me, Di, but I'm coming to your place today. Just imagine, I would be in such a fluster. So imagine if Jesus said, I'm coming to your place today. What do you imagine you would ask Jesus if he came to you? What would you say to him? What do you think Jesus would want to say to you? They're questions that you could ask as you think about the passage and allow it to take root and to touch your heart. We don't want the Bible just to be touching our heads. We want it to be having a deeper impact in our lives. There's something, isn't there, about having someone come into your home, into your house. It's a privilege for me when I get to visit other people's homes because I know that they're taking a risk at letting me come in. And I'm taking a risk when I let you come into my house. You might notice that there's a pile of stuff near the chair in the lounge room. You might see that I'm not good at dusting. You might notice that sometimes the back room smells a little bit doggy because I let the dog in the back room. You might notice those things and judge me. I take a risk when I let you into my house, and you take a risk when you let me into yours. But there's something very special about having somebody come into your home and sharing a meal with you, isn't there? Even a cup of coffee. There's something very special about that. And that's what Jesus did with Zacchaeus. He came into his home. He wanted not for Zacchaeus just to be on the edge of the crowd, but he wanted to be a part of his life. He wanted to impact him. And Jesus wants that with us. He wants to be part of our lives, to be there in us. He says, I want to be there with you. I want to be known by you and to know you. There's a verse in Revelation 3:20, and it says, Jesus says, behold, it says, here I am, or behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. And I don't know, I did have a picture. Oh, yes, you can see the picture there. It's a little bit dark from my perspective, but you can see that picture of Jesus knocking on the door and saying, I want to come in. But he doesn't force his way in. He waits for us to invite him. It's a really lovely picture of God, Jesus wanting intimacy with us and wanting relationship. So, but beware, if you ask him, he will come in, but he may change your life too, like he changed Zacchaeus's. So it's a wonderful story. And I'm going to get Dave to read it again, because I think sometimes just hearing it a second time and hearing what the actual words of the Bible say. I think Dave's going to read it now. Oh, he's just getting the bulletin to come and read. So as Dave's reading, what I'd like you to do is just to listen. You could follow along in the bulletin, or you could shut your eyes and just try and imagine yourself in the story. Just listen for the word, for something that God might be speaking to you about through this story. So thanks, Dave.
Okay, so this is on the back of the bulletin. We're reading from Luke chapter 19. Jesus was going through the city of Jericho. In Jericho, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a wealthy, very important tax collector. He wanted to see who Jesus was. There were many others who wanted to see Jesus too. Zacchaeus was too short to see above the people, so he ran to a place where he knew Jesus would come. Then he climbed a sycamore tree so he could see him. When Jesus came to where Zacchaeus was, he looked up and saw him in the tree. Jesus said, "Zacchaeus, hurry, come down. I must stay at your house today." Zacchaeus hurried and came down. He was happy to have Jesus in his house. Everyone saw this. They began to complain. "Look at the kind of man Jesus is staying with. Zacchaeus is a sinner." Zacchaeus said to the Lord, "I want to do good. I will give half of my money to the poor. If I have cheated anyone, I will pay them back 4 times more." Jesus said, "Today is the day for this family to be saved from sin. Yes, even this tax collector is one of God's chosen people. The Son of Man came to find lost people and save them."